Mark thought his life was picture perfect, a stable career, 2 wonderful children, and a wife, Lucy, whose energy lit up every room. But everything changes during a seemingly idyllic weekend on a private island owned by William Fellows, a charismatic, wealthy client of Lucy's firm. What starts as a luxurious escape quickly unravels into a nightmare when Mark discovers a chilling proposal from William, and Lucy's complicity in it. Fueled by betrayal, Mark dives into a world of secrets, uncovering lies that shatter his perception of their marriage and his wife. As the truth surfaces, Mark sets a calculated plan of revenge in motion, determined to dismantle the life of the man who dared to destroy his. But as tensions rise and lines blur, Mark's pursuit of justice takes an unexpected, tragic turn, leaving him to confront the devastating cost of vengeance. A gripping tale of love, betrayal, and the consequences of our darkest choices, this story unravels the fragile threads of trust and explores the heartbreak of what's lost when revenge consumes us. The soft hum of my laptop filled the dimly lit office, a soundtrack to the orderly life I had built for myself. As an IT manager at a mid-sized marketing firm, I was comfortable navigating binary worlds of precision. Life outside the office wasn't much different, routine, stable, predictable. My wife, Lucy, was the vibrant counterpoint to my quiet existence, a blonde, blue-eyed force of energy whose laughter could disarm anyone. We had been married for 10 years, parents to 2 wonderful kids, Emma and Daniel. From the outside, we were the quintessential family. From the inside, it felt much the same. Or so I believed. "Mark, you won't believe this." Lucy's voice snapped me out of my work trance one evening. She rushed into the room, a bundle of excitement. William Fellows invited us to spend the weekend on his private island. William Fellows was one of our firm's wealthiest clients, a titan of old money who exuded charm and power. Lucy, as the firm's customer ambassador, had been working closely with him for months, often regaling me with stories of his generosity and charisma. I dismissed them as professional admiration. "An island, huh?" I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm. "It's not just any island, Mark. It's practically a 5-star resort." Her excitement was infectious, but there was a flicker of unease in my chest. "Jack said it's a big deal for the firm. William might become our largest client." She leaned in closer, her eyes gleaming. "You'll love it. Clear blue waters, luxury villas, everything we could dream of." I nodded, but her words didn't quite settle. Maybe it was the way she described William, like he was larger than life. Maybe it was something deeper, a whisper in my gut I couldn't quite place. The day of departure came quickly. A private charter flight whisked us away, and the island revealed itself like a mirage in the ocean. White sand beaches hugged the shoreline, and opulent villas peeked out from lush greenery. As we landed, I couldn't help but admire the sheer scale of wealth on display. William greeted us on the veranda of the main villa, dressed casually yet impeccably. He was every bit the polished mogul Lucy had described, with a presence that demanded attention. As he shook my hand, I felt his gaze linger, as if he were sizing me up. "Welcome, Mark," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Lucy's told me a lot about you." "Good things, I hope," I replied, forcing a smile. "Of course," he said, turning his attention to Lucy with a familiarity that gnawed at me. "She's been invaluable to our work. You've got quite the partner." The weekend unfolded like a dream, or so it seemed. Days were filled with snorkeling, kayaking, and lavish meals. Lucy thrived in the setting, her energy magnified by the island's allure. She mingled effortlessly with the other guests, her laughter ringing out over the waves. I tried to relax, to enjoy the escape, but the whisper of unease persisted. The second evening, we gathered for dinner under a sky littered with stars. The group was lively, glasses clinking, conversations overlapping. William sat at the head of the table, the undisputed center of attention. His charm seemed effortless, drawing everyone into his orbit. After dessert, William rose from his chair. "Mark, Lucy," he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Would you join me for a moment?" Curious glances followed us as we trailed him into his private office. The space was a study in understated luxury, from the mahogany desk to the leather-bound books lining the walls. William poured himself a glass of whiskey and gestured for us to sit. "I have a proposition," he began, his tone casual yet deliberate. "It's personal." I exchanged a glance with Lucy, but her expression was unreadable. "I've had the pleasure of working with Lucy over the past few months," he continued. "She's extraordinary, sharp, charismatic, and a delight to be around." "Thank you," Lucy said softly, her cheeks coloring. William turned his attention to me, his gaze piercing. "Here's what I'm proposing. I'd like to spend the rest of the weekend with Lucy. Just the two of us. In exchange, I'm prepared to transfer $100,000 into your joint account." The words hung in the air, surreal and impossible. For a moment, I thought it was some bizarre joke. But William's expression was dead serious, and Lucy's silence was deafening. "What the hell are you talking about?" I finally managed, my voice rising. "It's a straightforward arrangement," William said, unfazed. "You both walk away with a significant sum, and Lucy and I enjoy some time together. No strings attached." I turned to Lucy, waiting for her to explode with indignation, to walk out of the room. But she didn't. She looked down, avoiding my eyes. "Lucy." My voice cracked. "Say something." Her lips parted, but no words came. Rage bubbled up, hot and unrelenting. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You think you can buy us?" I spat at William. What kind of person even suggests this? He remained calm, as if he were discussing a business deal. "It's your decision, Mark. But I'd like an answer by morning." I didn't respond. I stormed out of the room, the sound of my footsteps echoing down the corridor. Lucy didn't follow. Back in our villa, I paced the room, my thoughts spiraling. How had it come to this? Was Lucy complicit? The whispers of doubt in my gut grew louder, morphing into a roar. She returned hours later, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "Mark," she began, but I cut her off. "Don't," I snapped. "Just don't." The silence between us was suffocating, a chasm that words couldn't bridge. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. When morning came, the island's beauty felt like a cruel joke. As Lucy smiled and mingled with the others, I made my decision. If she thought this weekend was her triumph, she had no idea what was coming next. The air was thick with heat and salt as I stepped out of the villa the following morning, my head throbbing from a night of restless thoughts. The island's beauty seemed almost taunting now, a paradise masking the chaos brewing beneath. I watched Lucy laughing with a group of guests by the pool, her blonde hair catching the sunlight like spun gold. Her carefree demeanor felt like a slap in the face. I wasn't a naturally confrontational person. I preferred logic, structure, things I could control. But this was beyond anything I'd ever faced. The proposition William had made last night hung over me like a storm cloud, and Lucy's silence had cut deeper than any response could have. I needed answers. "Mark," a voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to see William, as composed as ever, standing a few feet away. He held a steaming cup of coffee and gestured toward a shaded area with loungers. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't respond but followed him, my fists clenched at my sides. We sat, the sound of waves crashing softly in the background. "I'm not here to antagonize you," William began, his tone annoyingly calm. "I realize last night's conversation was unconventional." "That's one way to put it," I snapped, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "I value honesty, Mark," he said, ignoring my tone. "And I don't want you to misunderstand my intentions." This isn't about disrespecting your marriage. I've developed a connection with Lucy, and I wanted to be transparent about my feelings. I leaned forward, my voice low but venomous. You wanted to be transparent? By offering me money to loan you my wife? William tilted his head slightly, as though considering my words. I understand how it might look. But let's not pretend that money isn't part of everyone's lives. We all have our price, Mark. You're delusional, I said, standing abruptly. Stay the hell away from my wife. I walked away without waiting for his response, the conversation doing little to quell my growing rage. But as I re-entered the villa, I realized the confrontation hadn't resolved the real issue, Lucy. Her complicity, her silence, was the unanswered question gnawing at me. Later that afternoon, I found her alone in the villa's kitchen, slicing fruit for some elaborate dessert she had promised to bring to dinner. She didn't look up as I entered. Lucy, I said, my voice firm. We need to talk. Her hand paused mid-slice, but she didn't meet my gaze. About what? Don't play dumb, I snapped. About last night. About William. She set the knife down carefully, as though the conversation might explode if she moved too quickly. Mark, it's complicated. It's not complicated, I said, my voice rising. He made you an offer, and you didn't say no. That's not complicated. That's betrayal. Her eyes finally met mine, wide and glassy. It's not what you think, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't say yes, Mark. But you didn't say no either, I countered, the words bitter in my mouth. Why? Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time, she looked small, vulnerable. I don't know, she admitted. I was caught off guard. I didn't know how to respond. Bullshit, I spat. You've been working with him for months. You knew exactly what he meant when he said he wanted to spend the weekend with you. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't let them sway me. I needed the truth, not theatrics. Mark, he's persuasive, she said finally. He's been flirting with me for weeks, and I thought it was harmless. I didn't realize it would come to this. And you didn't think to tell me? I asked, my voice sharp. You didn't think I deserved to know that the man hosting us on his private island was trying to seduce my wife? She didn't answer. Her silence was louder than any words could have been. I walked out, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the spacious villa. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it all. How long had this been going on? Had she already crossed a line she couldn't uncross? The doubts were suffocating. That evening, I made a decision. If Lucy wasn't going to be honest with me, I'd find the truth myself. While the other guests lounged by the bonfire after dinner, I slipped away to William's villa. I'd noticed earlier that he was meticulous but careless in one specific way: his laptop was often left unlocked. If there were any secrets to uncover, they'd be there. The villa was quiet when I entered, the faint hum of air conditioning the only sound. His laptop sat on the desk in the corner, the screen dark but the power light glowing. I moved quickly, waking the device and navigating through his files. Years in IT had made me an expert at extracting information without leaving a trace. The first few folders were mundane: tax records, invoices, travel itineraries. But then I found the emails. Hundreds of them, spanning months, between William and Lucy. I skimmed through them, my stomach churning with each line. What began as professional correspondence had shifted into flirtation, then something darker. Phrases like "our secret" and "can't wait to see you again" jumped off the screen. Attached photos of Lucy, smiling, laughing, oblivious, made my hands tremble. The most recent exchange was from the day before we arrived on the island. William had written, "The weekend will be unforgettable. Can't wait to have you all to myself." And Lucy had replied, "Looking forward to it." I stared at the screen, my chest tight with betrayal. This wasn't just a flirtation. This was premeditated. They had planned this weekend together, and I had been nothing more than an afterthought. I copied the emails onto a USB drive and shut the laptop down, my mind racing. The truth was worse than I'd imagined, but it also gave me clarity. Lucy had made her choice, and now it was my turn. As I stepped back into the cool night air, the distant sound of laughter carried on the breeze. It was hollow, almost mocking. But beneath the weight of my anger and hurt, a plan began to take shape. I wasn't just going to confront Lucy or William. I was going to destroy them both. The morning sun rose over the island, casting golden hues on the pristine shoreline. Yet for all its beauty, the paradise around me felt like a thin veneer, barely concealing the rot beneath. I sat on the villa's veranda, staring out at the waves, the USB drive clutched in my hand. The emails burned in my mind, every word a dagger. Lucy's betrayal wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, it was deliberate, calculated. By the time Lucy emerged from our room, dressed casually in a floral sundress, I had already resolved my next steps. She smiled as though nothing had happened, as if the tension between us didn't exist. The sight of her sent a fresh wave of anger through me, but I held it down. For now. I'm going for a walk, she said, her voice light, almost apologetic. Care to join me? No, I replied, not even glancing her way. I've got things to do. Her expression faltered, but she didn't press. She left, and I waited a few minutes before moving. I had a mission, and there was no room for hesitation. William's villa was as quiet as the night before. Most of the guests were enjoying a boat tour he'd arranged, so I had the opportunity to act undisturbed. Using my IT expertise, I accessed the villa's Wi-Fi system and installed a monitoring program on his router. It would capture all network activity and record the websites he visited, emails he sent, anything connected to his devices. It wasn't enough to expose his affair with Lucy. I wanted more. I wanted to dismantle the facade of charm and power that William wore so effortlessly. As I worked, a faint thrill coursed through me. For the first time in days, I felt like I was in control. That evening, the tension between Lucy and me was palpable. The other guests seemed to sense it but said nothing, their smiles strained and their glances darting. Dinner passed in a haze of forced small talk, the clinking of glasses the only relief from the silence between us. Afterward, Lucy approached me as I sat on the edge of the pool, staring into the still water. Her hesitation was obvious, her steps small and measured. "Mark," she began softly, "can we talk?" I didn't respond at first. Then I turned to her, my expression blank. "Talk about what?" "About everything," she said, her voice breaking. "About what happened. About us." "Us?" I repeated, my voice low. "There is no us, Lucy. Not anymore." Tears welled in her eyes, but I remained unmoved. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I love you, Mark." "Love?" I scoffed, standing abruptly. "You don't even know what that means." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I saw the emails, Lucy," I said coldly. "I know everything. You planned this. You lied to me, to our kids, to yourself." Her face crumpled, the weight of her guilt evident. "I didn't," she began, but her voice faltered. "I didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me?" I hissed, stepping closer. "You wanted this. You wanted him. And now you're sorry because you got caught." Her tears flowed freely now, but I didn't care. My pity for her had run dry. "I can't fix this," I said, my voice flat. "But I can make sure you face the consequences." "What do you mean?" she asked, panic flashing in her eyes. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned and walked away, leaving her sobbing by the pool. She didn't follow. Back in the villa, I plugged the USB drive into my laptop and reviewed the data from William's network. Among the emails and files, I found exactly what I'd hoped for: evidence of financial misdeeds. Offshore accounts, falsified contracts, and correspondence with shadowy entities. It was a goldmine of incriminating material. The emails confirmed what I suspected: William's wealth wasn't just inherited, it was propped up by schemes that bordered on illegal. With this information, I could ruin him. But it wasn't enough. I needed to time this perfectly. The next day, I made subtle arrangements. While Lucy avoided me, too ashamed or afraid to confront me again, I watched William closely. His charm was unshaken, his confidence infuriating. But the cracks were there, faint but visible to someone who knew where to look. The final evening on the island arrived, marked by a grand farewell dinner. William spared no expense, the tables laden with gourmet dishes and the air filled with laughter. Lucy sat across from me, her eyes downcast, while William held court at the head of the table. The other guests were oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, but I could feel it crackling like static electricity. As the night wound down, William stood to make a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. "And to the wonderful connections we've built this weekend." Polite applause followed, but I remained silent, my gaze fixed on him. When the dinner ended and the guests began to disperse, I made my move. "William," I called as he stepped onto the veranda. He turned, his expression unreadable. "Mark," he replied smoothly. "Enjoying the evening?" "I thought we should have a chat," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Of course," he said, gesturing for me to join him. We moved to a quieter corner of the veranda, away from prying eyes. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder containing his incriminating files. "Recognize these?" I asked, holding the screen up to him. His smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of unease. "What is this?" "Your dirty laundry," I said, relishing the shift in his demeanor. "Emails, financial records, deals that could land you in prison. I've got it all." His jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "Justice," I said simply. "For me, for my family, for everyone you've screwed over." "You think you can bring me down?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "I've handled worse." "Maybe," I said, slipping the phone back into my pocket. "But I've already sent this to your board of directors, the authorities, and the press. Your empire's days are numbered." For the first time, William looked genuinely unsettled. His cool facade cracked, and I reveled in the sight. "You made a mistake, William," I said, stepping closer. "You underestimated me. And now you'll pay the price." Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked away, the weight of my actions settling over me. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming control, about proving that no one could buy my dignity or my family. The island might have been his domain, but by morning, it would be his downfall. And I would be free. The private charter plane touched down on the mainland, and the collective relief of the passengers was almost palpable. The tension of the last night on the island had carried into the journey, the atmosphere heavy with unsaid words. Lucy sat beside me, her gaze fixed on the tarmac, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She hadn't spoken to me since my confrontation with William, and I hadn't made any effort to change that. I didn't feel triumph as I replayed the events in my mind. The emails were sent, the evidence distributed, and William's carefully constructed empire would soon crumble. Justice, or something like it, had been served. Yet, as we disembarked and went our separate ways, a hollow ache settled in my chest. The drive home was excruciatingly silent. Lucy kept her eyes on the road, and I stared out the window, lost in thought. The familiarity of our suburban neighborhood brought no comfort. When we pulled into the driveway, the house loomed before us, a fragile relic of a life that no longer existed. "I'm going to unpack," Lucy said quietly as we stepped inside. Her voice was void of the energy that had once defined her. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone in the living room. I sank onto the couch, the weight of the past few days pressing down on me. The USB drive was still in my pocket, a cold reminder of everything I had uncovered. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and I picked it up to see a flood of notifications. News outlets were already reporting on William's downfall, the headlines stark and unforgiving. Prominent businessman exposed in financial scandal, one read. Empire of Deceit, the fall of William Fellows, another declared. A grim satisfaction flickered briefly before being snuffed out by the enormity of what I'd done. William would face consequences, but what about me? What about Lucy? The questions swirled, unanswered and unrelenting. The next morning, I woke to an eerie stillness. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that sets your nerves on edge. Lucy's side of the bed was empty, the sheets cold to the touch. I assumed she had gone downstairs, maybe for coffee or some semblance of normalcy. But when I reached the kitchen, she wasn't there. The house felt hollow, as if it had been abandoned. A strange sense of dread crept over me as I called her name. Lucy. No answer. I checked the living room, the study, even the laundry room. Nothing. Panic began to rise as I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I pushed open the door to the master bathroom, and the sight that greeted me stole the air from my lungs. Lucy was slumped against the bathtub, her skin pale and her lips tinged blue. An empty bottle of pills lay on the tile floor beside her, the label blurred by the tears that instantly filled my eyes. No, I whispered, rushing to her side. Lucy. Wake up. I shook her, desperate for any sign of life, but her body was limp, unresponsive. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with frantic urgency. The paramedics arrived quickly, but their faces told me everything I needed to know before they even spoke. Lucy was gone. The weight of the word suffocated me, the finality of it crushing my chest. She left this, one of the paramedics said softly, handing me a folded piece of paper they had found on the bathroom counter. My hands shook as I opened it, Lucy's handwriting a cruel reminder of the woman I had loved. Mark. I can't undo what I've done, and I can't live with the pain I've caused you. I thought I was stronger, but I'm not. You deserved better than this, better than me. I hope one day you can find peace, even if I couldn't. Lucy. The paper slipped from my fingers as I crumpled to the floor, the sobs tearing through me with a force I couldn't control. I had been so consumed with revenge, so focused on exposing the truth, that I hadn't seen the cracks in Lucy's armor. I thought I was punishing her, but I hadn't realized how much she was punishing herself. The weeks that followed were a blur of funerals, condolences, and unbearable silence. The headlines shifted from William's scandal to speculation about Lucy's death, and the whispers of judgment followed me wherever I went. Friends, family, neighbors, they all looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion, as though trying to decipher my role in the tragedy. At night, the house felt impossibly large, every creak and shadow a reminder of what I had lost. I replayed our final moments together, the words we exchanged, the ones left unsaid. The revenge I had sought so fiercely now felt hollow, its victory tainted by the cost. I thought exposing William would bring closure, but all it brought was emptiness. Lucy was gone, and no amount of justice could fill the void she left behind. In the end, I wasn't sure who the real villain was, William, Lucy, or myself. All I knew was that I had lost the one thing that mattered most, and I would spend the rest of my life haunted by the question. What if I had forgiven her?